A group of U.S. lawmakers visits Taiwan to discuss relations between the two countries. Signs, shouting, and division. Taiwan's legislature struggles to find common ground on controversial reforms. Taiwan is learning lessons from Ukraine's experience defending against Russia. Plus,
we catch Taiwan's most famous queen as she takes to the stage back where it all began.
a warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Betty Chen. A U.S. congressional delegation is in Taiwan. The visit comes just days after China wrapped up huge military drills around the country in response to a speech made by President Lai Ching-te. Tiffany Wong is following the story for us from Taipei. Tiffany, what is this visit about?
Now, this delegation is the latest from the U.S. to visit Taiwan and the very first to visit after President Lai Ching-te's inauguration earlier this month. They're here to discuss U.S.-Taiwan ties in trade as well as regional security. And they've also promised that U.S. weapons shipments that have been delayed for years will make their way soon to Taiwan. Now, this comes after 2 days of heavy military drills by China's military around the island, held as punishment for what they call separatist forces after the inauguration. These American delegates are here to send this message to China.
President Lai and I, as always, had a very sobering and yet very direct conversation about the threat that this island faces from its neighbors, and it's a real one. And without deterrence, Chairman Xi has bold and aggressive ambitions, and we just need to do everything we can to make it possible for him to see that the risk outweighs the reward.
That was the chair of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Michael McCall, who's heading this delegation and who was also previously sanctioned for his last visit to Taiwan in 2023. Now, this delegation also includes some other staunch supporters of Taiwan, including Representative Young Kim, who recently advocated for Taiwan's inclusion in the World Health Assembly.
Is this visit a message to Taiwan, and do we expect a response from China?
China's foreign ministry has just saying that this visit by a U.S. delegation violates the One China principle and that it will take, quote, necessary measures to resolutely safeguard national sovereignty and territorial integrity. China opposes exchanges between American and Taiwanese lawmakers as they don't have any official diplomatic relations and frequently responds with increased military drills around the island. The largest we saw was after former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan in 2022. And we also saw a huge response after former President Tsai Ing-wen visited California and met with former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy in 2023. Now, just this morning, Taiwan's Defense Ministry reported over 20 Chinese aircraft around Taiwan, this still after China ended its military exercises around the island on Friday. So as you can see, the military pressure around the island is still very real.
Thank you, Tiffany. That was Tiffany Wong speaking live from Taipei. The legislature remains deadlocked over a draft of controversial bills that have sparked chaos on the chamber floor and protests in the streets. An opposition coalition has the votes to get the bills passed, but as John Ventres reports, that may not be the end of the story.
There are brief lulls like this one in the days-long battle that's taken over Taiwan's legislative chamber. But protest banners all along the walls and on the floor show the front lines haven't shifted at all. 5 deeply divisive reforms that would vastly expand legislative power have sparked violent clashes among lawmakers. Protest organizers say the reforms have brought up to 100,000 opponents into the streets. Among the controversial points is text that would let lawmakers compel testimony from people of interest in investigations and fine or jail those who give false testimony. A final reading of the bills could come as soon as Tuesday, promising more chaos. President Lai Ching-te and his Democratic Progressive Party, or DPP, are staunchly opposed to the bills. Lai took to Facebook, calling on lawmakers to follow proper procedures. But in the legislature, the DPP is outnumbered by two rivals who've joined forces to get the bills passed. One of these, the Taiwan People's Party, had this to say about the DPP's opposition.
总会是执政党自己在动员抗争行动，我觉得这有一种时空作乱的感觉，太奇怪了，这个我不晓得在干什么。
The other rival party, the Kuomintang, says the DPP is giving partisan interests priority over the greater good.
这篇脸书文从头到尾都是从民进党的利益出发，没有从国家的利益，没有从总统的高度。
Others in the party see the DPP's opposition to the bills as a hypocritical about-face. Lawmaker Wang Xiaoling wrote on Facebook that this kind of expansion of legislative power is something the DPP once supported.
这个法案基本上已经延宕了非常多年。如果这一次民进党党团认为这个法案有问题，不满意这个法案的话，他可以透过现行的制度，也可以申请释宪。
But the DPP says its opposition to the bills is well-founded, and in previous constitutional court rulings, no less.
585讲得很清楚，立法院有调阅权的往前伸的调查权。国民党现在把五权变一权，这样的写法当然是违宪的。
The DPP says the legislature has no right to compel private businesses to testify or to hand out criminal sentences. And it says if the bills do pass, it will indeed bring them before the Constitutional Court for a ruling. The political turbulence these bills have brought may not be anywhere near an end. Kama Xu and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
An opposition party legislator says she will sue a ruling party colleague after punches were thrown during a legislative session on Friday. Opposition Taiwan People's Party legislator Mark Chen was punched in the face, while the ruling DPP legislator Lin Shufet was hit on her arm. TPP Chair Ko Wen-je has voiced his support for Mark, who is a Vietnamese immigrant, saying had she backed down, it would paint immigrants as weak and easy targets. The clash happened during the third round of voting on opposition-backed legislative reforms that have sparked nationwide protests. Lin said she was acting in self-defense. Mark says the incident has triggered her past trauma.
我是因为家暴的那种恐慌，哎呦，现在就是因为他打我的那一拳后，就会让我就是所有以前的那种伤痛都想到，都会觉得恐怖的。
Pro-Palestinian activists say they were harassed and treated violently while protesting on the sidelines of a pro-Israel concert in Taipei on May 18th.
I was grabbed by someone from behind, and he just threw me on the floor very violently.
The demonstrators who were holding Palestinian flags say they were physically and verbally harassed at a music festival that was organized by the Friends of Israel Alliance Taiwan. Video footage has emerged of one protester being thrown to the ground at the event. The Israeli Economic and Cultural Office in Taipei, whose representative attended the concert, said one of the protesters made a suspicious dash towards the stage. Frontline workers from Ukraine are sharing lessons learned from defending their country with people in Taiwan. They say the public's ability to respond to a crisis could be key. Jaime Okan reports.
Part of Ukraine's success in defending against the Russian invasion stems from the role that civilians are playing. Tens of thousands of its citizens have volunteered to support the military in both combat and medical roles. And that's caught the attention of people here in Taiwan, which faces its own threat of invasion from China. At a summit in Taipei, Ukrainian NGO workers shared insights from the front lines.
In high school, we had lessons. Girls were learning how to give a first aid, and guys were learning how to be the territory defense, how to use guns and something. I think it was very good way of government to teach us just a little bit, but it really was very useful because we didn't panic. Not all, but some people who remember these lessons, they don't panic. They know that they need to make it back, get food, get medicine, take a lot of water, water for drinking, water for like wash hands and side things.
Taiwanese civil defense groups like Kuma Academy have already started teaching people here about emergency first aid. They're focusing on quickly treating wounded people during a conflict. But these Ukrainians also say that with the world growing more unstable, learning things like using a gun is also necessary.
There is need to know how to provide first aid and how to defend yourself in case, because also we live in very uncertain times, so we don't know, maybe Third World War will start, yes. So no one knows what will happen. We see this rising authoritarian regimes.
When Russia invaded Ukraine, thousands of civilians took up arms to protect their communities. Working with retired or reservist military personnel, Ukraine created dozens of territorial defense forces to support the military. And there are calls for Taiwan to do the same. These Ukrainians say a territorial defense force will build up resistance, making Taiwan harder to attack. But some analysts fear it could be too little, too late.
Things like reserve reform, creating a territorial defense force or a home guard, making training more rigorous, reorganizing the ground forces, those things take a lot of time, and time is something that Taiwan may not have in spades.
The Ukrainian volunteers say the core lesson is to be prepared for a conflict and aware that what could come at any time. The Ukrainians here say that words are meant to inspire action and not fear, and that many people in Taiwan are willing to defend their country.
And actually, it's great to see that 50% of your population is ready to defend your country. But now the spirit should be, how to say, with the government partnership develop in institutions and civilians from tactical medicine. So no panic, just when you know how to use tourniquets and everything. This is even morale is important when you know what are your steps. Instead of fear, you have to be prepared.
As these workers head back to the front lines, people here are hoping to apply their lessons to Taiwan with the aim of being prepared for the worst. Andy Shui and Jaime Ocon in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Global drag sensation Nymphia Wind has returned home to Taiwan to headline the Taipei International Drag Festival. Reese Ayers was there to find out what her rise to international stardom has done for her community and for Taiwan.
The return of the Queen. Taiwan-born global sensation Nymphia Wind is back for her first public performance in her homeland since being crowned the winner of RuPaul's Drag Race Season 16.
对啊，就是终于夺冠之后，就是可以回来台湾演出，就是蛮开心的。毕竟这是家乡，所以就可以很期待回来，就是吃臭豆腐，然后吃芋圆，所以已经等了很久了。
And she's got company. Performing alongside her at the second Taipei International Drag Fest, around 50 performers from Taiwan's local drag and arts scene, and 3 fellow RuPaul alumni, including Miss Jade So from Drag Race Philippines, and Plain Jane and Mirage, fan favourites who competed alongside Nymphia on her season of the reality competition show. Also in attendance, Taiwan's Culture Minister Li Yuan, as well as LGBTQ+ rights advocate and one of the country's few openly queer politicians, Miao Boya.
那我想台湾的指标其实就是多元跟自由，各式各样的表演在台湾都可以存在。
Nymphia's success as the first queen of East Asian descent to win the show has done a lot for the community's visibility and helped put Taiwan on the map for international audiences.
Nymphia 对台湾获胜的影响，我觉得是一个很棒的呈现亚洲文化的方式，而且它的获胜也代表了台湾可以在国际上被更多的看见跟认识。
Nymphia talked about Taiwan so much on the show, and because of her love of Taiwan, her showcasing of like all the culture, so it's going to make everyone see Taiwan more.
And now back where it all began, Nymphia's homecoming is a cause for celebration. This event is a testament to the scale and quality of Taiwan's drag scene. A growing community of artists who combine fashion, comedy, performance, and activism. Throughout her rise to global stardom, Nymphia showcased Taiwanese and broader East Asian aesthetics and performance arts in her drag, and repeated nods to Taiwan's local drag community that raised her. Since returning home, Nymphia has been a busy queen bee. Between rehearsals, squeezing in a performance for then outgoing President Tsai Ing-wen, and attending protest events outside the country's legislature.
今天我觉得我的立场就是去捍卫我们辛苦就是得来的民主，然后就是觉得我们都要认真的站出来去捍卫我们在乎的事情，这样。
And later this year, she'll represent Taiwan at the Paris Cultural Olympiad, as she continues her reign as America's next drag superstar, spreading Taiwanese and drag culture around the world and bringing a little bit of the world back to Taiwan. Joseph Wu, Kamashu, Simonetta Ho, Philip Prasad and Rees for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up after the break.
We take you to Taiwan's biggest car collecting and recycling plant to take a look at why this facility is so important.
This month's top hits on TaiwanPlus. Explore the world of floating palaces, where extravagance meets technical prowess.
很多客户他们找我们的时候，他的 idea 是没有其他船厂做得来的。
Rediscover your passion for classical, jazz, and a cappella music with the exceptional talent of Taiwanese musicians. Feeling hungry? Join Canadian influencer Luke Martin as he explores Taiwan's finest delicacies.
I fell in love with the culture, the people, and the cuisine.
Famous for their delicious cuisine.
Looking for great advice? Brace yourself for expats revealing Taiwan's hidden gems in the new season of Wow Taiwan.
Wow me some more.
Vibrant and original programs exclusively on TaiwanPlus.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. Chinese Premier Li Qiang and South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol have agreed to resume talks on the free trade agreement and launch a diplomatic and security dialogue. The announcement comes ahead of trilateral talks between South Korea, China, and Japan taking place in Seoul today.
한중 외교 안보 대화를 신설해서 6월 중순에 그 첫 회의를 개최하기로 하였습니다. 외교부와 국방부 당국 간의 2+2 대화 협의체라고 볼 수 있는데요. 외교부에서는 차관이 그리고 국방부에서는 국장급 고위 관료가 참석을 하게 됩니다.
Chinese Premier Li Qiang said the two countries should work together to tackle common international and economic challenges. Li also met with Japanese Prime Minister Kishida Fumio, the pair vowing to deepen regional cooperation between China and Japan.
こうした努力の積み重ねにより日中関係を安定させていくことは日中両国のみならず地域や国際社会にとって有益なものである確信をしております。李強総理のご協力を心からお願い申します。
To find out more, Harel Hughes spoke to Alessio Pottolano, Professor of War and Strategy in East Asia at King's College London.
This was the first trilateral meeting between China, Japan, and South Korea in a few years now. What did we see come out of this summit?
So I think the first thing that we can observe out of this trilateral meeting is really the fact that the three countries have shown the willingness to sit around the table. Now, the key thing within this is also that the conditions for the meeting to take place are rather different from the spirit of the original trilateral meetings, because the original ones really focused on the pursuit of free trade agreements of sorts. Today is about very much almost the opposite. It's about mitigating a number of growing concerns that the three actors have, and in particular South Korea and Japan insofar as China is concerned, both in economic and security terms.
The talks between the three countries largely centered around trade agreements. Were there any topics that were off the table?
Our understanding is that the main, if you want, challenging issues concerning in particular developments around the Straits of Taiwan, developments around the Korean Peninsula, and in particular North Korea's behavior, were all kept somehow off the main conversation. Now, that being said, these would be massive elephants in the room. So whilst you don't talk about them directly, I'm pretty sure that the conversations around economic and political dynamics linking the three countries could not avoid but making some measure of reference. Again,
there were also bilateral meetings between China and Japan and China and South Korea on the side. What was different about those?
Well, that's an excellent question, because there are very specific issues related to the bilateral dynamics. Of course, when in 2019 the last meeting took place, South Korea and China in particular were in a very different economic play. You have a situation in which China is a major competitor when it comes to key sectors of the South Korean economy. When it comes to Japan and China, the economic relationship had already started to change in the mid-2010. And I think what at the bilateral level at this point was very important to discuss was perhaps the question of cross-strait relations, and in particular the fact that that wouldn't any sort of greater increase across the strait or rising levels or attempts at normalizing higher level of coercion we'll probably see Japan being directly affected and impacted from it. So it is absolutely remarkable and significant that these bilateral talks are taking place, because these are complex and intimate relationships on both sides, both Japan and South Korea.
That was Harel Hughes speaking with Alessio Potolano from King's College London. Lithuanian President Gitanas Nausėda has been re-elected following a campaign where his support for NATO and opposition to Russia have been a focus. Nausėda will serve a second 5-year term beginning in July. With nearly 90% of polling stations reporting, Nausėda won around 3/4 of the votes, the highest seen in a presidential election in the Baltic nations since 1991. He says he will continue to strengthen the country's security and tighten relations with its NATO and EU allies. During his campaign, Nausėda also called for an improvement in relations with China, which have soured since Taiwan opened a representative office in the country. Search efforts are continuing in Papua New Guinea after a landslide that is feared to have buried over 600 people. The UN Migration Agency estimates more than 150 homes were leveled under 6 to 8 meters of rubble in Enga province. Over 1,200 people from the area have been evacuated as the disaster zone remains dangerous and unstable. At least 7 people are dead and 100 injured after heavy storms and tornadoes tore through the U.S. state of Texas. Governor Greg Abbott has issued a disaster declaration. He says the storms destroyed more than 200 buildings and cut power to up to 38,000 people. The extreme weather comes as the region prepares for what government forecasters have called a potentially extraordinary hurricane season this summer. Some 400,000 vehicles are scrapped in Taiwan each year, but what happens to them? Our reporter Cindy Chi explores the country's largest vehicle shredding plant.
This is the final destination for this old vehicle, and in moments, it's crushed. It's part of the recycling process at this vehicle shredding plant in Kaohsiung in southern Taiwan.
What we do right now, shredding the cars and separate all the material to be the pure raw material. Yeah, and then to use them, to let the other factory to use that, to have the good quality of the products.
The facility has been around more than 2 decades and occupies over 20,000 square meters, making it the first and the biggest private vehicle collecting, recycling and shredding plant in Taiwan.
As you can see behind me, there are around 200 to 300 vehicles ready to be recycled. From the arrival of each car to dismantling and shredding it, it takes around 2 hours. By the end of the day, over 80% of each vehicle can be reused.
And that's quite the improvement from before. The company says 20 years ago, only around 2/3 of the vehicle could be reused. The process at the plant is pretty simple, which takes up to 10 minutes.
我们这个阶段的话，就是已经把轮胎、电池、润滑油，还有车上的冷媒已经拆卸完毕，然后接下来就是要把引擎室的引擎给拆卸下来。
The parts salvaged from the vehicle can be sold for reuse, often for a good price. The rest of the car then heads to the shredder. This machine, assembled in Taiwan with parts from Germany, can shred 200 tons per day.
那目前这个地方的话，就是经我们废车粉碎完毕之后所产生的废弃物。那这个废弃物的话，我们在我们粉碎过程里面会有集成。那集成吸起来的比较轻质物的废弃物会在这一个地方存放，然后重质的物的话会在后面经我分选完毕之后，从后面的出料口再载运过来这个废弃物储存区再做存放。
The factory says their method can turn a car into 98% pure raw material.
这样车体经过我们的这个所谓粉碎的破碎厂来处理之后，它其实里面有很多的金属是可以再回收的。对于台湾对于这个金属矿产比较有限的情况下来讲，这些资源对我们来讲是非常重要的。
Taiwan alone scraps around 400,000 cars a year. This volume of vehicle waste can pose problems for the environment if not managed well.
那第一个当然这个就是环境保护的问题了哦。那我们知道这个车辆如果废气在外面的话哦，那很容易造成它一个脏乱点。那甚至它如果里面还有残余一些油料啦等等哦，那渗漏出来的话，其实对我们的环境是会造成一些破坏的哦。
Taiwan now has almost 300 recycling factories, but only 4 are equipped to shred old cars. That's enough, the Environment Ministry says, and Taiwan's largest vehicle recycling plant is hoping to become even more efficient by 2027, with a goal to reuse over 95% of each scrapped vehicle, transforming discarded materials into valuable resources. Alex Chen and Zanny Chi for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. Finally, we'll leave you with more scenes from the International Drag Festival in Taipei. I'm Betty Chen. Take care and see you next time.